Time to get into semi-final number 1 here on the Pronago YouTube channel. It's the Tribunal stage, round 4. Going to qualify one more player in by the end of the next 3 matches that you'll be seeing on the channel. I'm looking forward to bringing it to you, so let's not hesitate at all and jump into our bracket view. As you can see here, the single elimination bracket is coming to an end. Our final 3 matches, starting off with IAMtheWHEATofGOD versus Doglived. This is an exciting Ascozi mirror match. And down here, the unlikely Smarty Cakes making it through 2 players he wasn't favored against, and now dueling Nebline. Will the Cinderella run continue? We'll find out in semifinal number 2. Otherwise, it'll just be the bog standard play of Nebline making it to a grand final for one of these tribunals. Looking forward to seeing which is which, so join me today. But first, we got to find out which Ascozi player that Protoss player is going to face. It's guaranteed AVP in the final, which is always cool. And I'm surprised to see the Ascozi doing so well already. So without further ado, we're going to jump into our first map. Now this is Gilded Wall, and it is going to be chosen by Doglived, who is in the bottom left as the Dark Sapphire Ascozi. Godwheat in the bottom right. He's not orange, but he's some other weird color, isn't he? I'll say orange, though. And look at that, he was orange. It's really hard to guess the colors on the landlock. It really does need some, brand new model, brand spanking new model, all that stuff, so we will see how it goes. And Godwheat in the chat saying, number 1 Ascozi versus number 2 Ascozi. I wonder who he could possibly be meaning by number 1. Who could that be? Doglived has been really grinding out the race for some time. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of it, out of these two dueling it out. Because I really don't think they know what AVA looks like, but they're both going for double radix, so they both got some ideas. Doglived going to scout ahead. Triple radix for Godwheat. Okay, I see how it is. We might not have a lot of time to talk about the strategy or the sort of game plan here. So before we get too hectic, I'm just going to go ahead and take a look at that very important map veto. So just so you guys know, Gilded Wall was, of course, Doglived's map pick. We've got Corrosion coming up second. And there's Monazite ban from Doglived and Tesseract ban from Godwheat. So those were their first initial moves to ban those maps. Missionary coming out here initially, so no surprises there. The only unit you can make by default is the Missionary or the Cardinal. You need Tech Center, Tech Relay in order to do anything else. Now the Pilgrim went up the ramp for just a moment and then turned back around, so I guess he's just going to try to defend and see what he can do there. He's gone for the very slow, not pulling any extra workers to power build the Radixes. Godwheat, on the other hand, has power built them, so keep that in mind. The eco for Doglived will be better. The army for Godwheat will be much better. Starting to get some Vespian in him now. He wasn't before. Going back to our veto real quick, just so you know. It was Frozen Sylphid and Saberhand second round bans with Impulsion and Quazar Quartet being picked. So our decider is Magnetron. That's going to be exciting if we get there. We haven't had too many 5-game series. I think it was just the Smarty AOT one. So a man can dream, particularly with regards to the new race. Missionary face checks. Ends up falling away and regenerating a little bit of life. I hear the incoming police sirens. They know it's too epic to have a best of 5 between the Ascozi, but they can't arrest me. Our game's for yours. Gauntlet coming up pretty quickly here for Doglived. It looks like he wants to, sort of double down on this. But look at that, Godwheat does the same thing. Just a little bit later, but with power building. So a little bit quicker. Actually, I think at this ratio, we're probably looking at it just completing around the same time. I feel like overall, the way that I'm seeing the Radixes appear, he's got the same output. He's just making a lot of missionaries. And look at that, third worker power building the gauntlet now. Who's going to win? Oh, look at that. He's actually overtaking him. The power of team building. The power of teamwork. It's magical. One of the things that, in my opinion, you're going to get from playing AVA is if it's going to be a biotic opener, eventually you're going to want to add in some functions. Just for a couple of things here. Just for a couple of things. At least in my opinion. Now power building that landlock as well with 3 workers. Is Doglived going to expand anytime soon? It doesn't look like it. He immediately goes into mass Vicar production now that his gauntlet is done. Some Vicars have been started over here. Actually, only 1, huh? That's interesting. He's starting to filter him in afterwards, but fairly bog standard there. Man, I really want to see... Okay, the expansion is going to come in from Doglived. I was going to say, I really want to see a nice long macro game between the 2 players playing Escozi. That, imagine. Just imagine. Absolutely outrageous. Also, I was thinking a little bit about how we have these little catchphrases, like the Zerg have refrains where they say stuff like "it is known" or this is known," "this is right," that kind of thing. And people have been using that in the community for some time. But the Escozi have the "our X for yours," you know, like "our thing for yours," and people have been using that as well. So I don't know, man. It feels very good as an author, if you will, as a from an authorial POV. It feels very epic to have people just start using the same stuff. Like I'm not writing it so that people kind of, you know, get it mimetically or whatever. Doglived actually comes down the ramp, so the Vicar count is definitely favoring our Dark Sapphire Escozi player, and the Missionary count might be favoring him a little bit as well. You can see Godway trying to go for that big clump of Vicars down in the bottom with that splash damage, but it doesn't really end up working out for him. In small numbers, Missionaries overwhelm Vicars because of the fact that they don't outdamage the heal that is intrinsic to the unit, thanks to its impact dissipation passive, which also gives it a speed boost. This is where 1 Rove would be so epic, because Doglived could just give chase with it or whatever, but... Or a Proselyte, you know, Proselyte has the same ability. That's probably going to be an easier thing to filter in. You can see the power building attempted over here for the grandstands. He ends up making a couple of them to be put down. Pretty good DPS overall, and yeah, he's actually been... He's used the rematerialize ability on the Vicars a few times to try to heal them, which is a pretty cute move. Try to keep them up to some speed there. Cypher was put down some time ago. It's just about ready to finish, and Doglived has every interest in going for tier 2, it looks like. Xylode! Straight to Xylode. Okay, I wasn't sure what he was going to go for. Chantry over here is going to provide some nice healing radius there. I kind of feel like the... I kind of feel like the Xylode is a fun one. I don't actually know what he wants out of that. Is it like Fontus? I mean, he's going to need extra tech for it, of course, but... Now, third base for Godwheat. You're speaking my language, good sir. Doing some hardcore gaming out here. Getting the macro going. Mimic coming out for Doglived as well. There's a short form detector. You don't really need it, the detection versus Escozi in particular. Oh, wow. Godwheat's going to be thinking about taking another base. Very nice. One thing I definitely plan on is having a hijacker that is permacloaked and doesn't reveal itself when... like, maybe reveals itself initially when hijacking, right? Sort of like how Kabbalists and stuff reveal themselves when attacked. That's going to be super cool. He comes up here to scout and doesn't see a landlock, and so he doesn't do anything. It's pretty funny. Godwheat is going to go for the expanse. Agonists are on the way for Doglived as he puts down another Xylode. Got his Dyad out to build faster. Very nice. Man, I am very excited to see what happens here. Oh no, he's only mining with one guy on the arch. He never restacked it after he built the structures. Well, he doesn't seem to have a problem with having an extra amount of resources, to be fair. Grandstand for the back door makes sense. This is a map that is a port of Golden Wall from Starcraft 2, done by Jujic. Shout out to Jujic. Or is it supposed to be like a JuGK, but I've just called him Jujic for the longest time, and now that's his name. We had a couple players who... a couple users who had that. Now, this is a little bit of a deadly situation because this base has got to be canceled, right? There's not really any way to finish that out. And that means that we are going to need to see it. Oh, it's not going to be canceled. It's just full dies. But you can see, I like this from Godwheat. He's making the decision to hold at his defenses, push out with the bulk of his army, knowing that his opponent does not have the army to deal with his whole army. Look at the Vicar count. This army is mostly Vicars. That is so wild. One of them ends up getting a scout off over here. But I think Doglived knows, oh shit, I'm going to need some help. Now, the Agonist isn't enough by itself to really make this happen. Yeah, there's some Vicars coming in from the top rope, but this looks like it's a pretty good move here for Godwheat. He's not following the main army on the other side, but you see, this isn't going to kill Doglived outright, but if he comes up here and cancels out this base, destroys it or whatever, maybe bleeds the army on the high ground with a cliff advantage, I can see him getting a lot of value from this move out. High value moves for sure. Let's see what he ends up deciding to do. Some of his units are dealing with the landlock. He needs to pick at the target and stick to it, and I love the splash damage on that ramp. Just absolutely flattens Doglived's army. More coming in. It's all Vicars, like 15 Vicars moving across the map to help out as well, and that is a brutal sandwich. Now, this could really turn into a kill threat, because Doglived decided to go up the ramp when really he needed to just cancel out the base and concede the base there, keep his army later. Agonist doing its best to supply a little bit of DPS, but well, actually, you know, this is the same inverse rule that happened with Godwheat's success up on the high ground. He's only barely breaking through. We got more units popping out. 7 Vicars at a pop. Oh dear. No, all of them are stacked up. The booming blast almost killed all of them. A lot of workers dead. You know what I would have liked to have seen instead of what he ended up doing? Because the Vicars are the heavy hitters. He has no melee units. Doglived could have really used some Dorinan if he had managed to get all the way up to, like, Bestiary Proscenium. That would have been probably a good move here, but unfortunately it does look like his production is going to be targeted next, and the production does not have a lot of HP. So, you know, unlike, you know, 1100 or 1300 or whatever the Stockade health and Fulcrum health are, like, it's only 900 and with pretty abysmal armor. This looks like it's a little bit too much. Doglived will not be able to sustain this, and Godwheat getting the little bye across Shopkeeper Dog due to the fact that our Terran favorite for the tournament could not participate, makes good on it in game 1. That is an Ascozy victory. I bet you didn't think I was going to say that today. Gentlemen, it is time for game 2. Godwheat in the top left, fresh off his victory, is going for a fairly quick radix here. Doglived in the bottom right, fresh off his loss on Gilded. While we're on Corrosion, and it looks like Godwheat is going to have his own map pick here, but we'll see if that makes a humongous difference. I think once the meta gets a little bit more settled and players have a, you know, the things are a little bit more developed in that respect, and, you know, a new race is always going to upset the meta anyway, but players always end up, you know, finding different strategies and such. I think, like, 2 years from now in professional Cosmonarchy play, which is wild to say, we will end up putting a little bit more stock in, oh, you took the enemy's map pick. That's a real big deal. If anybody doesn't know, I also cast Counter-Strike, and the map veto there is a really big deal. Obviously, it's a team game, but you end up in a situation where if you win the enemy's map pick, that's a statement at top-level Counter-Strike. You know, when the level is lower, and the match integrity is perhaps a little compromised, you'll often end up seeing, most of the time, players just saying, oh yeah, well, it doesn't really matter. Anybody can beat anybody on any map. And so the level of skill and mastery of the maps themselves, of course, not that being said, the maps also just change a lot anyway, but the level of mastery over the maps, I think, is something that we're going to see over time be something that develops. You know, it's not going to just be overnight either, but there will be some series, and there have been some series already where I'm thinking, okay, people are really putting thought into the map vetoes, and it really does matter if, you know, I had a strategy planned for, you know, this map, and, you know, map 1 that I pick, and then my opponent beats me on that. That represents a bigger loss than if I lost on his map pick. So just as an example of a couple of things to keep in mind about those vetoes. Doglived going to go for a much faster expansion off of the back of his 2 radix here, feeling fairly defensible. But it is a 3 radix open for Godwheat once again, and a lot of missionaries are coming out. We saw them get largely outmoded by the time the mass vicars were in play, and I feel like, you know, one of the things we didn't see any sort of run-by, despite the fact that Gilded Wall has a lot of run-by potential, whereas Corrosion not as much, at least so far as we've seen. There's definitely some room for if you wanted to take these little outposts here in the top right and the bottom left. These are things that you could do. Also, I forgot to color guess. So I believe this is Alice Blue, but it was Arrow for Godwheat. And Doglived is, of course, Dark Sapphire. It's not really a color guess. I already knew. So I'm guaranteed 50%. We'll see if I can keep guessing Godwheat correctly like map 1, not like map 2. I wasn't tactically waiting for more player color either. I was meaning to color guess at some point, but I had a really complex point to make about map rules, so I didn't. Anyhow, landlock is nearly complete. Gauntlet on both sides. Doglived going for his third Radix. So, you know, this makes a lot of sense. We are going to see more military power here for Sir Godwheat, but so far, it looks like we are waiting just a little bit for him to push across the map. And to an extent, I kind of understand. Missionaries can focus each other down, but it requires a lot of precision. And you really don't want to just A-click and let them auto-target different things or whatever. It won't end very uniformly. Doglived is going to be going for a function, so we'll see maybe a rove or two. One thing that I do think he could have gotten a lot of mileage out of is including a proselyte or two to speed boost his whole army. If you don't go function, you can't do it with roves. And proselytes do come out of the landlock, which does obviously mean that you're not building pilgrims for the time that you're building a proselyte. But I really feel like there's something there. There's something there, just adding one, you know, or if you have an expansion as well, spending one worker rotation to make a proselyte from both landlocks. I think that could so catapult your army across the map in terms of movement speed and stuff. So pretty big little power build here. Little big planet? No. Wasn't that made of yarn? I was going to say maybe that could be like a new race or something, but if they're made of string, I can't really do that. Anyway, listen, I find inspiration in many different locations. The gauntlet is complete for both players. Vicars are coming out for Godwheat. I'm sure we're going to see something of this sort come out here from the Radixes. The function seems like it's probably going to be Intendants, but I think he needs a little bit more crowd control. Intendants are okay at crowd control, so don't get me wrong. But he is going to need something that can deal with all of the missionaries initially, kind of reset the incoming attack. There's going to be an object early on, which I actually do prefer. I think the object here, I was just thinking that it'd be really nice to have one of those, purely because you make it so that the missionaries and the vicars have to spend at least a few rotations not doing damage to the rest of your army, due to the, you know, how wide the object's defense works. Doglived making a beeline for the high ground, and Godwheat conceding it. Now, all of the armies are clumped up together, so Vicars are going to have an outsized impact. You can see there the... Whoa. That was probably a mistake, but I could have seen it be a really epic tactical move if he knew which unit had Booming Blast on it and decided to kill it before it could do so much damage. Only trouble is if you have the timer on Booming Blast and then you die, then you still release the damage. I'm pretty sure it was just a misclick. Doglived going to be diving forward here, another function behind him. Object rocks up to start absorbing some of the incoming damage, but it's already been a broken formation, and the Vicars start to, you know, when the Vicar attacks something, not only does it do a released damage that's AoE, but it also slows their movement speed a little bit. And so that's ends up being pretty significant. Look at that. Frontlining Vicar. I mean, at least it did some of the friendly fire back to him, sort of Cyclops style. But it looks like this is going to be where Godwheat holds the incoming attack, just on that high ground. Worker count's massively favoring Doglived right now. I don't know if there was a lot of worker cuts or what. Feels like Godwheat's macro slipped. He has arches coming for extra Vespine income. He doesn't really have much tech development. He's just going mass Vicar Man. That's what he is. Not the Wicker Man, the Vicar Man, which is sort of like what you imagine maybe a Polish or German person would say instead of Wicker Man when they were describing it, just because they don't really have W. Well, they do, but it's like a L with a line through it. Anyway, the object is going to finally go down, but look at how much it absorbed in terms of damage. What a huge force multiplier that ended up being, shielding so much on the income, because there was no armor pen with this army, so you end up mostly dealing like massively reduced damage, especially once it deploys. The grandstand is nowhere near in sight. Doglived seems like he's cracked a code for this antibiotic play, anti-radix play. I don't think all the mass vicars in the world, all the Vicarmans in the world, German, Polish, or what, are going to help Godwheat here. He's dropped down. His natural is spoken for, and GG has to be called as another object arrives to further shield his opponent from doing any damage. Whew. Very nice game. Doglived answers back immediately, which means we are going to go to Impulsion, tied up. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for game 3. Doglived is the Dark Sapphire, Ascozy in the top left, and Godwheat is down here in the bottom right as the Alice Blue. Oh, Electric Blue. One of these days, I'll guess Alice Blue correctly. He's sending a Pilgrim far afield. Is he just going to make a... No. Oh, no. He's proxying, isn't he? Godwheat is going to be doing something a little bit cheeky. Yeah, he's definitely proxying. I somehow missed these two that were sent out even earlier. So this is going to be a cheeky game. This is going to be a pretty wild one. Radix on location, of course, for Doglived. Nothing fancy schmancy about that. We are on Impulsion, a bitty-bee map. Last time was Corrosion, a bitty-bee map. So we will have to see how the triple power build Radix at the proxy location ends up doing. Does he fix? Does he filter in a proselyte? No, it's just going to be more pilgrims, and he's sending another one across the map. You can see him actually building 2 Radixes here. This is very committed. My only concern really is that because of the travel time and because he's not power building all on one, the Radixes are going to come online pretty close to each other, and where's the advantage? You know what I mean? It's going to have to come down to micro. Let's see. And yes, that's a good point as well in chat. You can't make a proselyte until the Radix is done. Typically, I don't see this kind of action. Oh, of course, Doglived is going to scout it. Well, his missionary's almost done, so he can almost immediately send it across. And Doglived must be smiling about it. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to throw down a grandstand, which is a good choice here, in my opinion. This Pilgrim could have been building the Radix. Instead, he's going to build a grandstand. Okay. Godwheat's economy is so bad right now. We're going to have to see what happens because the third Radix has already started, and we are going to get those missionaries coming up. So, a little bit of a dance initially. You don't have to worry too much about the initial damage dealt there. But what does he do now? I mean, he's got 4 Pilgrims. Then is he trying to do the hit-em-up move where he just, like, tower creeps? The problem is he's not building much behind it, you know what I mean? And I think he might be thinking about using the Pilgrims as the front line, but the Grandstand's going to foil his plans. A proselyte has been made as well. Not using the active just yet, but one missionary goes down, another one very low. It looks like a Pilgrim also hit the deck. Well, lads, this is not looking too good, but maybe we'll find out what he wants to do in this situation. Triple building the Grandstand and adding more missionaries. He's got 10 workers compared to the 15 mining for Doglived. And triple Radix production. I mean, maybe the containment can still do something, to be fair. You know what I mean? Like, that is a possibility. Especially if he ends up getting another Grandstand up at some point. I don't know about that one. You can see him trying to focus down the Pilgrim there. That was pretty smart clicking. Now, the Grandstand doesn't do crowd control damage. It just does anti-armor, so it might end up being somewhat helpful. Proselyte can jump to heal all these guys as well, but we don't see it being leveraged right this moment. I mean, Doglived probably doesn't need to worry about that. His Gauntlet is coming. Oh, dear. Oh, there's the jump. He jumps right in, and he's going to see if he can break down the Grandstand. I think in this situation, you don't target the Grandstand. Doglived is kind of playing into Godwheat's hands here, because by targeting the Grandstand, he ended up wasting a lot of his DPS, because a lot of his DPS had no armor pen. The Grandstand itself is a 3 armor structure with 300 health. But the enemy bio units, those are much easier to kill with the bio army. I like the micro, stutter stepping backwards, and any of this damage is permanent, so there is that to consider as well. But it is looking a little bit dire here for Godwheat. I don't know how he's going to navigate this situation and get out of here. Yeah, now it looks like Doglived's actually figured out what I was just talking about as he ends up focusing down the combat units. And, he's trading down. He's obviously losing some of his missionaries, but this is all of the production, right? And so with the Gauntlet coming up, I'm kind of surprised there was no Cosmoscope just to, send a drop out to the other side and kill him that way. But he is going to break out. He is going to defeat the Grandstand. And then, the couple Pilgrims that were over here went all the way back. Cosmoscope is coming up for Godwheat instead. 1 HP, by the way. Did 600 plus damage before going down. And it does look like this will be The slow demise of Godwheat's outpost. And what will he do after that? Because this is all of his military production. Obviously, he's adding more behind the scenes. Radix number 4, Vickers coming out. Oh, man, that's dire. That is dire. He's gonna have to defend it. Like he has to actively protect it. He does have another grandstand to fall back to. So he's just got to take this time. You know, to an extent, Doglived can't really just run by and go attack the enemy base because then all these missionaries can come in and attack. But at the same time, he also could. He's like just sending a few out. You know what I mean? He's like, yeah, I'll just send a few out and see what you got. Because if there's no defense over here, which right now there aren't any military, these missionaries can cause a havoc. That's great moves by Doglived. Now, Grandstand is coming up somewhere else. Is it... Okay, it's further up by the ramp. I saw the Pilgrim over here waiting to expand, but he feels like he can't do that. And I agree. 3 Radix in production here for Doglived, and he's just scaling up his Vickers. That's all he's doing right now, Vicar Missionary. Really all he needs to do. Looks like the Grandstand will actually finish up. Missed opportunity slightly for Doglived. He could have just run by. Fun fact, the Grandstand deals exactly as much damage as you regenerate when you take damage from impact dissipation. So if you only take 1 hit, you will not have any problems. First hit's free. Vickers coming out in pretty good numbers here, 7 of them. This does feel like it has to be the end for this defensive push. You can see the missionaries diving forward and evaporating before our very eyes. So what do we get out of this, right? He's got his 2 Radix down here. His Gauntlet is coming up. He wants tirades, I think. He could have had the Gauntlet at any time after the Radix was completed, but he decided not to. And we will see Doglived finish this unit up. Finally breaking out of his sort of contain. Emissary coming for Godwheat. If he goes for a drop or something, that could be pretty good. And we got Missionary Vicar out on the other side of it. The Gauntlet is almost complete. I guess if he puts down, you know, the second Grandstand is one thing. Maybe he can get some Vicars himself. And he definitely needs a, you know, a tirade or 2. Still a pretty ref hash. I don't know if that's a comment on what happened or if it's a request. Yeah, okay. Apparently it was a real thing. That would have been really funny if he was like, please. All right, he scoots up the missionaries. He's got his triple Grandstand. He wants to see if he can just kind of... This is a risk you kind of have to take here, right? This is a risk that you kind of have to take because if your opponent walks in and kills you, I mean, he can, and you're dead. But if he thinks, oh, his army is there plus the defense, it opens up a window for you to do this emissary drop. My main concern is he going to have anything that will actually defend when the army, you know, pulls the trigger as the missionary drop occurs? Also, there's anti-drop here anyway, so it's a little bit academic. But it is a risk you have to take. It is a thing you have to do. Response time is pretty quick there, and only 1 worker, no, 2 workers going down. The missionary needs to hightail it out of there. Does have 3 of the missionaries in it. The emissary, rather, has to hightail it out of there. Maybe I'll kill a couple more workers in the process, but this is more or less, you know, taken care of. You know, it was just a tiny little drop. Almost caught up in workers, right? But not in terms of economic potential. And still a very big deficit that he's got to fight back out of. Oh, no. All right, our first tirade has arrived. Couple Radixes. Scaling the production of Vicars. Godwheat seemingly thinking that's his main ticket out of here. He also has drop tech, so he absolutely can go for a, you know, he can go for, like, dropping a Pilgrim somewhere and building a base elsewhere if he wants to. Oh, no. Oh, what a disaster. We caught it on stream and everything. Tirade number 2 is moving out. Looks like maybe it was spotted, the one up here. He's going to try to come out at the same time as he ends inside the base. He has managed to put down a Grandstand on the low ground. He's doing pretty well there. And look at this tirade kind of drawing attention, but the rally point is also, protecting the The rally point's also protecting the south flank, so this does feel really hard for the Tyrants to get in and do anything. He's still going to go for it. Takes a while for them to kill individual pilgrims. Only get a few shots off there. Yeah, unfortunately not able to get as much as he wanted. Now, if he had like 10 of them, it would be different. Once again, charging forward with his Vickers, hoping to get some good damage dealt to the Ascosi on the front line, and he gets a few of those units dead. No Chantry to kind of like dive back under and heal, though. That's one of the problems that I'm seeing. You know what Godwheat needs? There's no way he can get it, is a Fontus. That would be so good here. Just start healing all of those allies as it takes damage. Pulling the enemies into the Vicar Splash, you know? Good luck. Good luck getting to that one, Godwheat. Radix is coming up. I'm surprised this game is still going, to be fair, but it looks like it might be coming to an end as the Tirades do sync up with the rest of the army, but they will be felled relatively easily. I guess that one up top is probably going to cause some trouble, but that was all the ground army going. There's a lot of defenses, but nothing else really here, and it looks like Doglived is still going to be patient about it, grabbing his Cypher. They've actually evened out on production, but the 20-worker lead, Godwheat can't break out. He knows what's happening here and says GG, saves some energy for later in the series, and the favorite has begun to stack up the wins. Series point for Doglived. Will we go longer? Does Godwheat have another fight left in him? Or between Doglived and Godwheat. And there was a time when I was talking about this series and I said Dogwheat and Godlived or something like that. So, yeah, it's a little bit of a tongue twister of a matchup. Godwheat is in the top left, and he appears to be beige. Beige Ascosi. Doglived is, of course, the Dark Sapphire Ascosi in the bottom right. We are on Quazar Quartet for map 4. As a reminder, Magnetron will be map 5 if we require it. But that would require Doglived to drop this very match. Going to be scouting horizontally at first to the bottom left, so we'll see how that goes. One of the things that I think is a pretty big deal here over the course of the series that I've noticed is neither player has exactly blown me away with unit control, per se. So I do wonder what the game plan is there, and where the development is going to be there. I'm also seeing something that's a little bit cheeky from Godwheat. He's mined over 100 Vespene. What's he going to do with that, you know? Power building the Radix at the end of its lifespan there, and does he just go for a gauntlet straight away? He does. Now, I don't really think a Vicar Rush is all that useful, but I could see a world where you go like Radix Gauntlet Cosmoscope and you do a Vicar drop. I just don't think you have anything to defend a ground attack. And Doglived has found his opponent, and we'll see the Gauntlet come out very quickly. Oh no, the missionary's getting body blocked by the Pilgrim. Unbelievable. Alright, there you go. He's going to be able to get him. Pilgrim will scout top right, and it looks like the missionary will just scout everything else. Oh, thank you. Prime sub from Godwheat. He's watching. He's happy that I'm showing his victory. It might be his only victory so far, but I did show a victory of him. Picking that first game. You know, how often have we seen that, actually? First game of a series won by the underdog, and then they proceed to just get owned. Well, we'll see if Doglived can keep that story going in the same way, or if Godwheat will be our narrative breaker. Cannoli and Kasuga both did that, apparently, as an example. I really feel like it kind of reminds me of the show match as well. Mixu playing Ascosi versus Gerald. And Gerald being like, I don't know what I'm doing. And he lost his first few games versus the Ascosi. And then he started making armored units. And he was fine, right? This is before like the Mimic and the Scepter granted armor pen. And it kind of reminds me of that in a way. It's like, you know, neither player really knows. Like Kasuga didn't really know what was going on there. And he just didn't know to make armored units and to try to force the Ascosi to make a more complex comp, stuff like that. So So far, the tournament has definitely caught some people by surprise. Godwheat catching Hanmano, Doglived catching Kasuga, but they can't really catch each other. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like they don't know how the race works. They might not know how the race works in a mirror matchup because it's probably a fairly infrequent thing. But we'll see. We'll see. Expansion's finishing up at pretty much the same time. Nice little concave around the ramp over here. Nice bit of high ground for Doglived. He's actually basically done the same build as before. Well, his third radix is late, but his fourth radix is early, so we'll call it even. Where he went 2 radix, landlock gauntlet, and then added the other radixes after. This is cross spawn, so he can be pretty safe against any move out there. Plus he has advanced warning, at least if they take the shortest path. And players haven't really gotten to the point where they're not taking the shortest path, if you feel me. Grandstand at the natural, so he is going to be playing a little bit more defensively. He's going to poke in and see what's going on. Obviously, Vickers are here, and have been for some time. Fairly even worker count for the Ascozi players. And all the other races are at 0 workers. Noobs. One of the things that I do eagerly await is, like, it's going to be some time before we get to this point, obviously. I'm not blind to that. Also, BDB tile. But I really am looking forward to the day when we have all those extra races in the game and people are kind of used to them. And so, like, I don't know, a year and a half from now, we've gotten, like, the Blood Summon very well developed, and the Kogri are like the newest kids on the block or something like that. And people are getting really into, you know, they know all the meta stuff and they figured it out. And I get to, like, seriously talk about how, man, this player did this wacky strat. There's no way that would work. Like, you can't make that Blood Summon unit and think it's going to work versus this Kogri comp. Come on, man. Is it your first time playing against Kogri? I don't know. I just think that stuff like that is really cool. We're already seeing the beginning of that, the initial seeds of that with the Ascozi, with people figuring them out. So, looking quite forward to that. Radix number 5 on the way for Doglived, and we will have a little bit of an anti-drop defense for him. However, Godwheat is not opting for the Cosmoscope this time around. Alexander says, hello, I am eating in a car and watching. Welcome to the stream, buddy. And welcome to your car as well. Godwheat massing up at the doorstep. How does he break into here? The Grandstand's definitely going to be a nice little heavy tower, little anchor point for this whole defense. It does feel like the splash damage was starting to pay out some dividends, but the Vickers on the other side certainly did their own thing. Now, this sort of soft containment could make a lot of sense. We got a Chantry coming up here below the landlock to try to heal. Its radius is pretty wide, so healing out of combat, very good. One thing I was thinking about the Chantry is that maybe it would have a version of the Mimic passive where it consumes the fallen corpses for healing. So it can do both, like, an out-of-combat heal and an in-combat heal. Although that would also give it armor pen if I did that. So, I gotta think about that. But it's a cool idea. Anyway, functions are on the way. That is going to provide the objects again for Doglived, which we saw be really successful on Corrosion. It was like the most, probably the most convincing win out of all of the matches so far. Landlock coming up for base number 3. We commented on that earlier. You know, with a containment here for Godwheat, allowing him to get up to that level. Most of his army is much, healed up much more, but you can't really break out of this position, and you certainly don't want to try. Look at all that splash damage. Oh dear, Godwheat. You are being served up a silver platter that has Doglived's whole army on it. At the same time, it almost broke through, but reinforcements are now going to come in. And why did he do that before his functions were done, so he could make the necessary units? Now he's making a round of Cardinals, but his Vickers are just getting owned. Oh, his Vickers are getting owned. That clump versus that concave was so brutal. Definitely not where you want to be. Doglived still trying his best to push out. Cardinals are going to have a bit of a hard time by themselves. If you can, like, speed boost them or something versus the Vicars, then you can neutralize the slow. Grandstand at the 3 o'clock position, and he's got another Pilgrim at 6 that he's probably going to do the same thing with, watching the bottom left main and Nat. With a single Vicar patrolling is a good move as well. Yeah, there it is. There's the Grandstand. Very comprehensive game here for Godwheat, and Doglived choosing to attack before his objects were out is a hard one to end up dealing with. Now, the objects to absorb the incoming attack from the Cardinal, this is definitely going to allow him to break out. Make no bones about it. Those objects paid for themselves. More Vicars coming in, though, and he's not splitting these ones coming out of the choke point, so that was very dangerous. Does look like he's still going to shove Godwheat back as a moment of reprieve, and a couple of roves are coming out as well. Function, producing object rove, and then Radix producing Vicar, Cardinal. It's an interesting set of composition. I think it can work pretty nicely, but you do need to give some deference there. Yeah, I guess the roves are probably for that speed boost. Get your army across the map a little bit faster. It's neat that they end up turning into a cute little support unit partway through. Now he's going to see, okay, you've built a tower there. I'm going to go to 6 o'clock, but Godwheat's crafty and has built a tower there as well. One Pilgrim will be going to the bottom left. Oh, Doglived is opting into going to every single area on the map that Godwheat has control of, and it's brutal. He hasn't gone to 6 yet. That's the only spot that he hasn't gone to on the domain of the wheat, the farmland, the crops, the fields. And it's triple proscenium as the development here for the Wheat of God, having secured Tier 2 access. Objects are going to try to get up the ramp. We got a couple more here. Vicar count on the high ground is still pretty legit, and he hasn't been able to focus it down. The roves are not speeding anything up to try to negate that slow. Still, it ends up being a fairly cost-efficient fight for Doglived, all things considered. And now we're going to need to see a little bit of a defense from Godwheat. Has he tried to be a little bit too fancy with it? His army, standing army, isn't great, but there are no more objects to defend, and the roves are not using their active ability. Around a Cardinals suddenly for Godwheat, but most of his Vicars are gone. Cardinals still pose a big threat because they will do some damage, and the splash damage from the Booming Blast will start to do a number on the Vicar. He's going to go after this third base, but a fourth is already being set up at 9 o'clock. Aphorists are on the way for Godwheat. He knows that splash damage is going to be a key detail. Grandstand's up here in the top right, but he ends up just grabbing all of the Pilgrims and evacuating. Doglived is going for one final push here. He is developing a third base himself. Vicars on the high ground are going to be pretty tough ask for him to get by. They need to focus down the enemy Vicars, though. Godwheat, he's got his Aphorists out. Those splash damage is safe, so yeah, you're not going to be damaging your own Cardinals or anything, and that's going to initially turn Doglived back. Aphorists are very, very good specifically at dealing with low armor units, and the Vicar only has one effective armor versus them. You can see him still trying to do some heckling. I don't actually know where Godwheat's Pilgrims went. Did they end up dying? Or did they evacuate down here? It looks like some of them were bruised over there. I'm going to assume that they ended up evacuating down there. Still a lot of map control for the Wheat of God. Reinforcements do come in. And it looks like he's sort of piecing this together, but the Remax coming out of the units on the ramp and such, I think they're going to be a little bit too much. Now, one thing that is pretty good... He attacked his own Aphorist. One thing that is pretty good is if you can isolate individual units, and if there's nothing for the Aphorists to splash, their combat effectiveness goes way down. But it doesn't look like it's mattering too much just yet. Dude, Vicars as a pseudo frontline for the Aphorist is kind of wild. He's getting a couple of units coming up there, but they're not attack moving. Doglived is trying to get into a better fighting position, it looks like. As the dust settles on the battlefield, Doglived has 82 workers. Dude, this is a wild sequence of events. He's really swung the game into his favor in a big way. Another Proscenium is coming. 3 Xylodes as well. Big development here for Godwheat. All of this, of course, his mech units that are there are obviously going to have to path through his entire base. We'll see how well that ends up going for him. This could be this could be where he gets the Fontis. Dude, he's getting sandwiched on the ramp of his his fourth base that is basically his third now. Rogues are proving okay versus the Aphorists insofar as they don't die immediately. Oh no, they were hooked onto a different unit. Or they were, I don't know, yeah, they were trying to attack the Rove, I guess. Starting to look pretty dire here for Godwheat. He is going to go for the Bestiary, though. And the Xylode is coming. Doglived has such a humongous economic advantage that the fact that he's not at tier 2 might not matter. SCOZY tier 2 isn't a humongous power spike by itself. You obviously want to have some other units from tier 1 that can still help out, like the Cardinals are helping out the Aphorists right now, for example. Vickers we saw as like a pseudo front line as well, making it pretty hard to get in any closer. Maybe if we had some functions here for objects, Godwheat would be in a really good spot. But as of right now, it does look like he's being broken. GG, well played is called, and he will concede the match. Doglived has won after all. Guys, that was a very exciting series. A SCOZY versus a SCOZY, and it kept us guessing until the end. I thought maybe the tech development would have been really sick, but it does not end up that way after all. And Doglived cements himself as the best SCOZY in the server, while also being the one to go in and face a Protoss for qualification to the Battlement stage. One more best of 5 is all he needs to play. We'll see you for that one. GG's.